In technology, we often focus on the tools, the platforms and innovations that promise to solve big problems. But behind those tools are the people who understand not just where technology is going, but why it matters. Today, we're talking about transformation, not just moving apps from one platform to another, but reshaping businesses, redefining careers, and reimagining the future of IT. Joining us are two experts at the heart of this transformation. Ed Keene, Director of OpenShift Platform Global Services at Red Hat, helps enterprises migrate, modernize, and adopt cloud-native technologies to power their digital futures. And our own David Safaii, co-founder of Trilio, which specializes in protecting and recovering critical data in the complex cloud-native world. Together, they bring insight into the high-stakes decisions enterprises face when moving on from legacy systems. This week, we explore the trends shaping IT strategies and transforming enterprise cultures. I'm Pete Wright. Welcome to Trilio Insights. David, Ed, welcome to the show. So great to have you here today.
Oh, thanks for having us. Good to see you again.
Ed, let's start with you. Your role at Red Hat is, I don't know, is it fair to say it's a big one, leading global OpenShift services? How'd you get yourself into this situation?
It's definitely a mouthful, that title, but in short, so I oversee like Red Hat services. So that's our like consulting, our training, and our TAM for all things OpenShift, supporting like all of our local services teams globally. So I've been at Red Hat for 4 years. My background's all being with software companies and with consulting companies. And this is the first time doing consulting at a software company. So it's kind of like the best of both.
Ed is a wealth of knowledge, and everyone's got a journey to get to here and to become the global OpenShift services leader. Ed, I think people want to hear, how did you get to this position? Because you've learned a lot throughout the years. So, I would like to hear it. Pete would like to know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So I did computer science at college in England, and I started working for a software company in London after I graduated. And I was working for this company in London. I was on the road a lot as an implementation engineer, like helping our customers be successful with the products that we made. We were doing legal dictation software, and working with this company in London was going well. I was doing well there, and they said, "Hey, we want to expand to the US, and we want to set up an office in Chicago. Do you want to go to Chicago to help us set up the office?" I said, "Great." So I Wikipedia'd Chicago to see where it was and what was the deal with Chicago, and hopped on a plane, and I was supposed to be there for 6 to 12 months, and I met my wife, and then that's now turned into almost 20 years later, still here. So I work with them setting up the office and helping customers be successful with our software products, like across the US and Canada. And then was ready for a change after like 8 years of that company and running like the technology teams for that company in North America. Then wanted to go try my hand at consulting. So I did some consulting for Accenture, and was on the road every week with a young family, and that wasn't really like a good long-term fit. Helping a large customer out west with large deployments of, in this case, I think it was like Windows-based systems. So I had a lot of experience with Windows. It's kind of funny to now be at like a Linux company. And then moved back to another software company, and then cloud happened in 2013. So since 2013, I've always been like the cloud guy. So it started with AWS, then there's Azure, and it was designing our cloud service. So basically taking our on-premise software that was running, companies were running in their own data centers, building a SaaS version of that product, managing it ourselves, doing it in a cloud native way, using like the PaaS. So it was like Azure Service Fabric back then, using the PaaS services as much as possible. It was pretty cool and tip of the spear. We were one of the largest Azure customers back then, like 2013, 2014, 15. globally, which was a pretty amazing achievement. And then started really enjoying like the DevOps aspects of that, all the automation, all the cloud native with how quickly you can get software to market too, all the great capabilities of cloud with regards to like the scale, the elasticity. And then I became like a Kubernetes guy. I was like fell in love with Kubernetes. I did a lot with Google Cloud and GKE and helping companies build great apps on top of GKE. And then COVID happened and it was like cloud was going through the roof, and it was like, all right, how do I do this at the next level? And I have some friends who are working at Red Hat, and they love working at Red Hat. They loved OpenShift, and it's just too good an opportunity to get to be a part of the team. So one of my favorite things that people would tell me about before I joined was like how smart people are at Red Hat. And it's like a super nerdy, geeky company like me, people who are like wicked smart. So I'm not wicked smart. They help me get smarter every day. So yeah, that's 4 years later, I'm still here and still finding new challenges every day.
In Chicago?
I'm now in Raleigh. So we made what my wife's boss calls a lifestyle choice by moving to Raleigh six years ago. So for the milder winters, amongst our bit close to the family.
For sure. Well, we don't have any problem calling you a wicked smart guy. You might not feel comfortable doing it yourself. You know, it's all right, man. It's all right.
It's all that experience, right? In the customer facing experience, and the times where you've hit challenges head on, right? Years of that, and being at the front end of cloud adoption. That's how you end up becoming the global OpenShift services leader. So there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm glad we asked about it.
I'm glad to hear that there were two big C's in your life. 2013, cloud happened, and then COVID happened. And those are kind of massive inflection points in the development of your career, right? That those externalities influence cultural and business decisions that have gone on to define what you do day to day. I'm curious, as we walk into more of the back end, sort of what you help companies think through. Enterprises don't make decisions to migrate from legacy platforms lightly, right? One does not simply take that decision lightly. So can you walk us through your experience with the pain points, the key decision factors that end up tipping the scale to move in your direction?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've been helping customers do migrations, cloud migrations, like I said, since like 2013. And then there was migrations with modernization to replatforming to containers and cloud native on top of Kubernetes. And then there was like refactoring to more modern microservices architecture. So we were modernizing along the way. And then the last year and a little bit, it's kind of felt like going back to 2013 again, where we're now in like rehosting VMs, and how do we help customers be able to migrate as quickly and safely as possible, like the VMs and the virtualization platforms that are really like powering their digital business. So these are the VMs that are running their business. They're mission critical. And they're heading the point where they need to explore what their options are for the future and the next wave of their VMs and their IT business. And they're looking at like, all right, if we are now faced at a decision point of a contract renewal, and we don't like the prices in front of us, and we don't like the treatment that we're getting as an existing customer, what options do we have? And they're saying like, what's just the options for today? Like, again, back to that migration as is, to be able to like quickly, safely migrate today, but to the platform that powers like the next iteration of their digital business. So it's the time really is now, and has been like the last year, and this is like the conversation that I'm having with every customer right now, and probably will do throughout this year as well.
You know, Pete, you mentioned leading into this, there were two C's. I wish there was a third C to continue, because I mean, right now it's that additional inflection point in time, Ed, that I'm sure you're in the middle of. And these are some heavy conversations, right? Stressful conversations for some organizations.
Yeah, I mentioned like the mission critical applications that are running their business. And underneath those applications, right, is their virtualization platform that those applications are all running on. This is not an easy pull of the tablecloth and all the glassware still stays on the table and like replacement like that. There's a lot of considerations here in doing these migrations.
Well, and yet it seems like, and especially, from some of the stuff we've got going on in Trilio, it seems like that's the goal. Like, wouldn't it be great if you could pull the tablecloth and all the glassware stayed upright, right? That seems to be what we're working toward.
Yeah, there's tooling and automation and experience ranked to help to be able to automate these migrations at scale, but they're still very complex. So there's still very like David, you mentioned about like the experience from working with customers over the last 20 years, and every customer has their unique environment. It's all this like permutations of the different hardware and software setup, the software that they build themselves, their tooling, their infrastructure. So with all those permutations, it means that there's an innate amount of complexity into doing these migrations and being understand like what's the impact of like what's supported, what's not supported, what's the impact of doing this. Where do I also have like modernizations along the way? What does my risk look like? I've been able to do a risk analysis and see what are the areas that might be higher risk and need to delve deeper into. And this is both on like the hardware infrastructure side as well as you move up the platform, and then even into like the software and the workloads running on their virtualization platforms too. And who their partners are. Who's their ecosystem of partners? Again, their hardware partners, their ISV partners, like Trilio.
Yeah, Red Hat and Trilio, we're engaged in a number of really large migration initiatives with some organizations. And I guess, Ed, the question I'd ask for you, I think some listeners would appreciate is, what are the things that are kind of overlooked in this process? Because to some degree these are massive endeavors, but it's also it's relative to all organizations, right? Because one organization has 70,000 virtual machines that you and I are working on, 1,000 could be a lot for someone, or 500 could be a lot for someone, and the challenges are all the same. So what do you think is overlooked sometimes?
Exactly. And those 500 in the case of like, if that's a smaller, not obviously a smaller number, doesn't have to mean a smaller customer. Those could be like massive workloads, and they're very much like pets, not cattle. So for us in the DevOps world, right, we've been dealing with cattle for a long time, and now we're back to like, all right, like the how do we handle these as the unique pets that they are? And so we've been doing this for a while now, and so we have all sorts of guides, and I think about like a checklist to make sure that we're not really overlooking anything, because there's so many areas to make sure that you go through in these, and even to see the assessment through to the migration, like the different areas that you want to look through. So like one of them would be like the ecosystem. How do you, like, with your existing infrastructure, what do you plan to do with your existing infrastructure? What's the compatibility look like? What are some of the challenges that you have with it today? What are some of the considerations? Like, as we talk to customers, they're like, well, we thought about modernizing some of our networking for a while. When would be a good time to do that? Would this be a good time? The software that's running on them, and in that, like, what are some of the operational tooling that they're using that maybe they were using some of the built-in functionality around backup and disaster recovery? And so it's like, okay, what are our options and alternatives for the backup and DR now, with like being able to do so on top of OpenShift virtualization? And that's where like we rely on like Trilio, for example, there as a partner for that. How do they, when they're doing these migrations, how do they plan to repurpose and reuse and use automation in doing so their existing infrastructure? Like, can they reuse that? Can we have automation that we build for tearing down and reprovisioning their infrastructure on top of OpenShift virtualization? I was actually talking to one of our architects yesterday about it, like how the complexity of like doing these what we refer to as like bare metal deployments as well. Now we're interacting directly with like the underlying infrastructure. And oftentimes, like as a Kubernetes engine, like we're running on top of a hypervisor. Now we are like the hypervisor interacting directly with the infrastructure. So it adds a layer of complexity there too.
We always talk to people about automating whenever, wherever possible. right? Automation takes away the friction of adoption. Automation allows you to go focus on other things. So, whether it's leveraging Ansible or ACM, wherever possible, we're huge believers of that. And Pete and I actually had a conversation recently, and we were talking about, we had just come back from an OpenStack conference, and we were talking about how these people, a lot of folks, are going through migration initiatives, and the analysis paralysis is real. And I understand the sensitivity to move, for people to move, and that kind of time frame that they have. But we always tell people, begin to begin. And it sounds so trivial and cliched, but even if it's taking applications and workloads that are tier 2, tier 3 applications, you got to put the analysis paralysis aside. I mean, are you seeing this in some cases, and how do you get people moving along?
I'm seeing it. I'm reading about it actually over the weekend. I think I read about like a market research and insights company who'd said it takes customers 3 to 7 months to do the analysis and figure out like what their options are. I'm thinking, wow, we've been doing this for almost a year and we do it in 2 weeks. So we have this virtualization migration assessment, or VMA to sound a little bit more trendy. And that VMA is really like 3 to 4 days with the customer. And then we wrap it up the following week and we present like, here's our findings from our assessment. And it's less than 2 weeks. And what those findings are, one, we show the customer where are they moving to. So we collaboratively design their target environment. We say, all right, this is what you're running with your existing virtualization provider. This is what it's going to look like. Here's your high-level design for your new environment. And that's collaboratively designed through these in-person working sessions with the various stakeholders and architects and engineers and tech experts from our customer, the high-level design. So number 2 then is that customized integrated migration factory. So we have our tooling. Trilio is a phenomenal tool for like migrating workloads to OpenStack too, right? So we have these great tools that we can use, and they're great standalone. But how do we then plug that into the processes and tooling that our customers are running as well, right? So one customer I was working with recently said, like, we want to be able to provide self-service tooling to our development teams and our end users so they can migrate their own VMs in this case, or workloads running on those VMs, migrate them themselves on their schedule. So that meant like building our integration points between our tooling and, in this case, it was like ServiceNow. So we could use their like request catalog. Somebody could request it. It has the auto approval workflow built into there too. And then it just executes on like Trilio or MPV for OpenShift for tooling to execute on the migration. So that's number 2, that migration factory. 3 is like, how long is it going to take? Customers need to know, am I endeavoring on a 6-month journey or a 5-year journey? So how long is that migration going to take? And then ultimately as well, like, how much is it going to cost? What's it going to cost for us to stand up the new platform, to us to perform the migration, for us to operate it afterwards too? So what's that total cost of ownership look like? So those are the four key things that we identify and work through with a customer in that 2-week VMA. So forget your 3 to 7 month assessment, and we can get a lot done in those 2 weeks.
Well, I want to lean in a little bit on that, because what you just described is a technologically efficient wonder process, and it sounds really great. And that 3 to 7 months seems to, I mean, if I put myself back in those shoes, it seems like we're forgetting that you need at least 3 to 7 months to get through the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that are just raw human emotion about taking on a project like this.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true. Encourage people.
Yeah, right. And so I think there is like, when you're looking at a company that's committing to this level of change, what are you asking of teams to adapt to in order to, see their lives change around them in their daily workflow?
Yeah, that's a great question on point, Pete, because when I think about the fear aspect, these are like typically folks who are VM admins who've been managing like the platform and the workloads of the VMs running on top of there for a long time. And up until recently have loved their VM platform and they haven't wanted to have to make a change. And so now
I know how to do what I do every day. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Like, hey, I'm used to doing this. I've also, not only do I know how to do it, I've probably got 20 years worth of work built up and like the automation that I built around doing it that works with my existing platform. And I know how to do it and I know who to talk to about it too, because I've got a bit of a community. Maybe I've been going to like some of these tech conferences that have been very, very popular in the past. And there's a lot of fanboys around.
Wither that experience, Ed.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So all the way through from like provisioning a VM and all the automation I need for that, and how I've like made that better and I own it, through to like to managing the VM afterwards, the integrations into the different monitoring, operational logging tooling that I might have as well too. So there's a ton of like experience in there that people don't want to lose and they are fearful. And so one of a huge consideration that like I have, and my teams have when we're talking to customers is like, how do we flatten that learning curve, help customers and help from like the boots on the ground, the admins, VM admins, like understand like what's going to be involved, what the new world looks like for them. How do we make it easy for them? How's it, and including like, so there's the functional aspect of like I do in my legacy platform, if I need to do X, I click on Y or I run Y. In this new platform and I need to do X, like how do I do that? So there's like the mapping.
Functional mapping, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Functional mapping was almost like procedural. And then there's like the level up and like like team topologies is a great book and concept around like how teams work together. And there's like the cultural side of like, if you're doing a move from a legacy hypervisor to now OpenShift virtualization, where you're still rehosting VMs, there's still VMs running as VMs, and you're running your Windows, your Linux workloads on that. But underneath, you've got like Kubernetes. How do we help abstract away some of the complexities that might be associated with Kubernetes from like a VM admin? And maybe you've got an existing team that's already running Kubernetes and they already got that experience. They live and breathe in YAML and like taking a GitOps approach to it. And the VM admins are like, wait, I don't want to run my VM in a container and have to learn declarative GitOps in order to do this. How do we make it easier for them so that they can focus on running the VM and operating the VM, provisioning new VMs, running VMs, operating VMs, VM lifecycle management. So the VM admins can focus on that, and your Kubernetes admins can focus on like running OpenShift in Kubernetes. So there's all these considerations from like big picture and organizational change all the way down to like, how do I do my job?
Yeah, this is when VMs are first class citizens in this world, right? So having the ability to help both sides manage easily and efficiently is hypercritical. And I think one of the great things about Red Hat's services team and your organization is that I think a lot of people view you guys as you're not a vendor to them. It's really a partner. And that's what it takes. It takes a village, but you're viewed as a partner in this journey, and that's so important.
I was thinking about that earlier on today, actually, as I was talking to a system integrator partner. So we also have we have a rich ecosystem with a lot of partners. So yourselves, other ISV partners, system integrator services partners too. Let's think about the customer journey, how important it is for them to, on this journey where I mentioned there's a lot of complexity, maybe a lot of fear. Oftentimes as well, there might be a looming deadline. There might be a contract renewal that doesn't look good and it looks very, very expensive, much more expensive than it was previously. And they're like, all right, we need to migrate X number of VMs over 18 months to be able to like, get off. And so there's a lot of fear, a lot of pressure and stress on like hitting a deadline. And being able to have a trusted enterprise partner who has gone through this before. And you mentioned like, what are the top things to look out for? I mean, I've got way more than a top 12 things to look out for. I've got a top 5,000 things to look out for when you're doing this, right? I really mean like the 20,000 plus people at Red Hat who have been doing this for many, many years. Like what are how do we help guide our partners through this and inform them about what they need to be looking for, where some of the pain points and the risks are, and ultimately, like right up at our C-level leadership team, we want to de-risk this for our customers, right? We don't want to take our partners on a risky migration or a risky future. This is like we like this is what's running their business. They're running RHEL, they're running their business on top of their existing virtualization provider. These are high risk, mission critical workloads. So it's all about like helping them migrate as safely and de-risk it as possible too.
I mean, look, people buy from people, right? And part of this is instilling trust at a foundational level. And that's what, again, this partnership in this journey is about instilling trust. And I got to tell you, when we talk about people adopting OpenShift virtualization, it's up to, Red Hat and ecosystem partners like Trilio to provide that level of trust, to say it's okay to move these VMs over there, right? And I think that's what we try and communicate together.
Absolutely. We try to be transparent about it too, right? With like, hey, we have a complexity or risk line where it's like if there's certain aspects of a technology stack that maybe are more complex or higher risk. So we can transparently talk to our customers about it and say, like, these are the extra special considerations here with this part.
That's one of the things that's so gratifying to hear, because when we get mired in conversations about automation and all of the wonderful tools that we can spin up, it's mired in a technological conversation, and it can ignore the realm of humanity that has to do the work and has to change. I think that's really, really powerful. So notwithstanding the 5,000 things that you've learned that are all the number one thing you should probably do before you embark on a project like that, I'm curious if you were to look back, and you've been doing this 4 years, you said?
4 years in Red Hat.
Yeah. What would you say to yourself, your 4 years ago self, given what you've learned now, about how to best help customers struggling with this transition?
I would say was something that one of my mentors told me later on last year, which is like details matter. And they told me that details matter because of for me personally, what we were rolling out to everybody at Red Hat. So when you've got 20,000 people looking at like what you got in writing or what you're presenting, the attention to detail and the things that you say or the things you put in writing there, it gets amplified so much more. So the details mattered to me was their guidance to me as I think through like, all right, how do I roll this out at scale? And when we're going through these customer journeys, I would say it's the same thing, where because of the risk and complexity, there's the details matter. You can't skip over something. You can't make an assumption without validating it first. And so every step along the way, there's a lot of details, and they really, really matter. And that's why, again, like back to having that the data that comes from like Red Hat providing you the transparency and the visibility on like, here are sort of key considerations, what we've seen from other customers, supported, not supported, like all that matters, and it goes into like your detailed plan and execution along the way.
Yeah, I'm a tremendous believer of that. That was kind of almost beaten into me throughout my career, right? But it does show that you care, and it even comes down to from a presentation perspective, make sure every period's in the right space, in the right spot. I mean, it sounds so mundane, but it matters. And this is the stuff that we take outside of work, and you try and explain that to your children as an example. Say the details matter. We don't sweat the big stuff, right? When you're talking to your kids and stuff, but you gotta care.
I think you nailed it with the caring part too. I mean, like not to double dip on like what's important here, but like finding somebody who cares and like also has skin in the game. Like I am the wonderful people like within like Red Hat services and our partners. Like really sounds so cliche, right? But they really care, and it feels like people, like the teams at Red Hat that I work with, they have skin in the game and the success of the customer. They're like working on like a fire drill over the weekend to like help customers. If there's a grenade going off, they're the ones to jump on it because they want to help like protect the customer and save the situation. And like so many people across Red Hat, like they're in customer facing roles because they love customers and want to help customers be successful. And they'll self-sacrifice in order for like the good of the customer too. So find a good partner who you know will have your back and self-sacrifice and do whatever they can for you as a customer.
When we talk about these kinds of big migration projects, I know so much of the sell is in the big wins, right? Look at the improved performance and scalability and cost savings. It's so exciting. We can do so much. It's so big. But I'm curious, from your perspective, what are some of the unexpected benefits, the sort of emergent behaviors that come out of these things that are the more sort of subtle wins that companies may not have even expected to gain? I think
so. What the focus has largely been on migration, right? Migrating VMs. How do we quickly migrate the VMs to so it's scale as is for the most part? Like, you're really touching so many parts of the full platform, the infrastructure, the workloads running on it, that you're entering like many decision points about like, oh, this application, can I now run it as the vendor provider as a container, and I can start to like modernize this, or this part of the infrastructure that's been bothering us for ages, like now's the time for us to like rip it out and replace it with something more modern too. And like, I really enjoy like the need today is to help people be able to rehost their VMs to today. But I really enjoy like beyond there, starting to get into customers around like what are the different like inception points for modernization too, whether it's like the developer experience and how we onboard a new developer and they start like doing their first local build of the application and then start being able to write code through to like how do they push that to production? How do they push it securely as well? So if you think about like the SolarWinds 2020, like secure software, so like the supply chain issue that there was, like how do we secure their supply chain? So like one of the parts that I enjoy the most is like when we find these different little openings for like modernization along the way too, that maybe they didn't have before with their incumbent or legacy provider too.
It's interesting, Ed. I think in some of these, the journey here in some of these migration process, there are all these little things along the way. One, just in the very beginning, as folks are assessing their inventory, it's almost like spring cleaning. The number of VMs that they can just let go away, and the amount of hardware that they can remove out of the system, just because they have no idea why they were maintaining these 500 or 1,000 VMs that have been sitting there for eons. And I find those stories very interesting. But your point around it's this journey with OpenShift, right? The ability to modernize, right? You can move people to OpenShift virtualization, start down that path of microservices and containerization, and then use that as a springboard to OpenShift itself. And then beyond that, we can really start talking about multi-cloud, hybrid cloud stories where some workloads can go live in Rosa or an Arrow, right? And now we've got the ability to manage applications and its associated data here as a VM, over there as a containerized apps, or up in the cloud, in the public cloud, if that's needed. So,
exactly. It is funny because they start, right? They start with the VM migration. We're rehosting the VM. We're migrating it over. But then where do they go from there? And maybe that is replatforming to a container. Maybe it's doing like domain-driven design and re-architecting it to like a microservice. And then as that microservice, maybe we can start running it in a serverless fashion in the data center or in the public cloud with like Red Hat OpenShift on AWS or ROSA or OpenShift on Azure, which is ARO, the other one, or in Google Cloud. So providing that full hybrid cloud experience where then you've got the tooling with our advanced cluster management, where you can manage it's the same interface. And a lot of work has been gone on for that as well, to make sure it's a real flat, simple learning curve for people making the switch from like a virtualization platform, and how they manage their VMs now in our advanced cluster management, wherever they're running. Are they running in the data center? Are they running in a colo? Are they running in the public cloud?
Yeah, and so as people, I look at certain initiatives. So like in the financial services sector, and you have things like Dora, where it's now multi-cloud management, right? OpenShift becomes that layer across these clouds, right? And this is what I excited for Trilio, because Trilio becomes that data protection layer, not just from a backup and disaster recovery in a multi-cloud scenario, but also the ability to help move the application and its data wherever it needs to be. So I kind of view us as, this layer, this, that goes across all clouds. It's just, where do you want workloads in the data to be placed at any given time? And that becomes really empowering, right? To know that I've got that much control over any infrastructure, right? And that's what we can do together.
Exactly. It's actually one of the use cases that we're working through with like a large flagship customer right now. Is like that exact use case of like replicating the data between, like, in a hybrid cloud model. Like this is why like Trilio and ISV partners is so important. And it's like OpenShift virtualization plus Trilio and our other ISV partners too.
These are the kinds of conversations that I imagine are so exciting. Like when we finish the migration and then 18, 24 months later, they call you and say, oh my God, I had no idea I'd be able to do this, and it's changed our lives. Right?
They become use cases for us going forward.
Exactly. Well, let's just, we're getting close to the end of our time here, and I would like to do a little bit of prognosticating if we could. Let's say they've made the big move. What happens next? What do your, new Red Hat OpenShift partners have to look forward to? What's on the horizon?
A lot of the modernization that I've kind of alluded to it on the way, right? So developer experience is a big opening for customers as they move into like a full application platform, like using OpenShift, not just for virtualization, but really for their developers and the great applications that they're building in-house. It's like Satya Nadella said, probably back in 2013, every company is a software company. And so now being able to serve them up that hybrid cloud application platform where they can start to look at like the experience of their developers as they're onboarding, as they're writing code locally, as they use templates to be able to like provision, deploy code quickly, as they deploy code safely, like when you start baking in security into it, as they interact with other developer teams through like an internal developer platform. And how can we see like the APIs and the catalog of other teams that we're working with, and see like where can we start consuming their APIs and interacting with their services too. Helping them modernize their applications too. What does it look like to re-platform their application or rehost? Where's some of that low-hanging fruit for apps? So we've got a whole bunch of great automation and templates for them to re-platform to a native container, a cloud-native container. So those are the parts like where you can go to next. And it's certainly not always like right at the end of the migration. The migration is you by far and away the most important part, right? That's what bringing the customers to us right now, and what the heavy focus is. But without risking the migration, and especially the timeline, there's opportunities to modernize along the way too.
Insofar as this is, I feel like the benefits speak loudly for these migrations. Let's just say there is an alternate universe where somebody is on the fence, torn about whether to migrate with you, Ed. What's your 60-second elevator pitch?
If you are at a decision point for maybe a contract renewal, or you're having a bad experience with an existing vendor, or you're seeing what's happening within the market, and now is the time to evaluate your options and consider like, do you want to be in the same situation in 1 year's time, in 3 years' time, or do you want to use like this momentum within the market and the experience of like numerous other customers, companies like in the same boat as you? So like, do you want to use that experience to find an enterprise partner who, like I described, has your back, cares about you, cares about your success, and is going to help you de-risk a potential migration and be able to migrate quickly and safely like today to hit that deadline, whether that deadline is 1 year's time, 18 months time, 3 years time, hit that deadline, but not just for the migration of your VMs as they are today, but to then also be able to land on a platform that's going to be for the next iteration of your digital business. So where do you want your digital business to be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? So don't reinvest in a legacy incumbent provider who's not got your back, who's not caring about the future of your digital business, but think about like, where do you want to put your hard-earned dollars to work to help your business evolve?
See, these guys are world class. Ed's team is world class, and it goes back to what we said before: instilling trust. And I think that's what the Red Hat services team conveys. And it's been great working with them.
Well, and it's so easy to get excited about working with Red Hat and the Red Hat Trilio partnership. It's not even partnership, it's core infrastructure, right? Let's get to that point. It's that fundamental, and it's just so powerful to hear the way you guys talk about this together too.
Yeah, like David said, like the core infrastructure for like the hybrid cloud world, right? Like that's why it's OpenShift virtualization and Trilio in order to be able to support like the hybrid cloud use case.
This has been a fantastic. What do you think, David? How do we do? This is our first fireside chat together.
First off, I think Ed said it all. So
yeah,
this has been great. And Pete, I appreciate you coordinating all this.
Well, I appreciate both of you and your insights. Thank you so much for being here, sharing. Ed, great to meet you. And I hope this is not the last time we podcast together.
Yeah, great to meet you too, Pete. And nice to see you as always, David.
Good to see you.
And thank you all for downloading and listening to this show. We appreciate your time and your attention. Don't forget to check those show notes. We'll have links where you can learn more about Ed and Red Hat and everything they're working on, and David and all of our projects going on at Trilio. We're excited to show more of our work in helping to bring these migrations to successful conclusion. On behalf of Ed Keene and David Safaii, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch up with you next time right here on Trilio Insights.